there will be a local equilibrium, a balance that will be reached because everyone agrees that ISIS is the ultimate demon. There was a disagreement over others, but that's it. Now, we've entered the post-ISIS era, and the dust is settling. We're seeing victors and losers emerging. We see the resurfacing of old fault lines. We see the emergence of new fault lines. What's important to understand here is that the fight against ISIS was not primarily about ISIS for local and regional actors. After the first existential moment, yes, it was about ISIS back in May, June, July, August, September 2014. But very quickly, the fight against ISIS became primarily a vehicle of regional competition. I mean, there was an understanding that, if you jumped into the fight against ISIS, you were actually jumping in a race to capture important territory, to stake claims in the region that would actually benefit you in the greater struggle in the region. From all we know today, looking at the very fundamentals of that conflict, Assad will survive in the foreseeable future, which is a defeat for a number of regional actors. And Assad has every interest in capturing as much territory as he can now. He has no interest in playing nice or really abiding by what we call the escalation agreements, or what the Russians are trying to broker, etc. He has actually every interest in using the Russian dominance of the battlefield in the absence of the Americans to freeze conflict where he needs it to be freeze, so he can actually focus on the territory he wants to capture and then change again. And this is something we've seen quite often in the past, since the fall of Aleppo, since December. There is no prospect for a political transition in Syria anytime soon. I mean, the Geneva process, I'm sad to say, is a farcical sideshow. It's a useful one. It's an expedient, convenient one. A number of governments hide behind the pretense of a process because, you pretend you're putting conditionality, that, that's your policy when there's no real policy. A weak process that doesn't have much leverage into it. At the same time, I would argue that process is necessary to at least keep parts of the opposition on board so that there is no massive dejection and abandonment that would actually work in favor of the more hardline elements who say, look, I mean, jumping into a UN process that was Western backed and supposedly internationally backed led us nowhere. I mean, they took us on a ride. They took them on a ride. I mean, that's sure, but, diplomats and officials won't say as much. I'm an analyst, so I can say pretty much whatever I want, so that's one of them. Who's the geopolitical winner in this regionally? I would say, the Iranians are ahead. They showed that commitment, expertise, experience, strategic patience pays off. They were able to demonstrate that they stand by their friends in good and bad times. Contrary to, for instance, the Gulf states, who actually are largely pulling the plug on that. That matters. Put aside whether you agree or disagree with this side or that side, who's the more reliable partner? And that's a key matter, because that's going to shape how the actors are going to behave in the future period.